This is how China is beating Western gaming development. Let's talk about it. So I addressed this yesterday. Made a video. It's getting some pretty decent traction over on YouTube. I appreciate the views. And I even appreciate the people who do not agree. The only thing I would ask is maybe watch the entirety of the video before you form your opinion. But that's neither here nor there. My position is this, and I anchor this based on my experience. I said this in the last video about what China is doing, and I showed Black Myth Wukong. Showed an article that we wrote over on gamer2gamers.com about Blood Message. And there's a cautionary tale in all of this. And in my experience, one of the things that we were charged to do with respect to assessing the vulnerabilities of an adversary, specifically Russia, but I have friends that work the China desk. We all essentially do the same thing depending on what country your focus is. And it would require a comprehensive understanding of that country's history, national security objectives and interests, culture, cultural nuances, what it views are its far-reaching strategic goals, and how it views the world, and most importantly, how it views itself in the world. As I stated before, I want Western gaming companies to succeed more than anything. I would love for Western gaming companies to make games that return us to the glory days of gaming, where you understood that regardless of who the producer of that game was, when you put that into your system, you were going to get a game. Whether you liked it or not, there was a game that had interesting features, an interesting environment, an interesting world, and a very interesting main character. That used to be the standard for Western games. And then over the past decade or more, Western gaming companies decided to shift. Whether you like the terminology or not, there were political ideas, social ideas that crept in at the strategic level through what's called ESG, environmental social governance. And regardless of how much you know about that, it essentially served as the 50,000 foot level guidance on what companies should do and how they should operate to make sure that their ESG score is high. Go do your homework if you're not familiar with this. At the lower level, at the social level, this materialized as diversity, equity, and inclusion, which it may hurt your feelings. This is directly linked to Marxist ideology. You must first identify a problem in society and force your recommended change upon the populace. In video games, this materialized as inclusive characters, inclusive storylines. But it's gone even further than that. It's not just the potential for race or gender swapping characters. It's the forceful inclusion of very niche ideas, LGBTQ being one, where no one I know has necessarily an issue with those people. Live how you want to live. I don't care. Do whatever you want to do. But here's the thing. Do not force that on me and call me a bigot because I don't align with your worldview. That's all I ask. You want to do whatever in your bedroom, I don't care. But when you have games that come out in the West that essentially serve to preach to gamers, it's an odd social justice proselytization that's happening. And that's where Western gaming companies are losing Western gamers. And if you're China And we know that our adversaries are not as stupid as we would like to think they are. They're just not. That's the reality of the world. They're doing their own analysis of the West. You'd better believe it. They have been for a long time. It just so happens that now they're in a position to act on it. They can take a look at what's happening at the social discourse level of the West and pick your poison with respect to divisive issues. And what's happened is, in the shift that Western gaming companies have made, they have left the barn door wide open for a country like China to walk right in. So when you look at games like Black Myth Wukong, said it before, amazing game. In my argument, probably should have been a really, really strong contender, if not have won a Gotti. It should have. Damn good game. I think Blood Message will be in another amazing game. It just will, and we know what comes with it. And we've made it easy for China to do this. This is not some Japanese calculus physicist in a room somewhere figuring out some advanced mathematical equation to figure out how you break in the door of the Western gaming market. No, that's not what's happening. We've shot ourselves in the foot, and our adversaries are pouring salt on the wound. And while they're pouring salt on the wound, they're giving gamers exactly what we've asked for the past 30 years. Give me an escape from reality. Give me something where I fall into another world, put myself in the shoes of this protagonist, overcoming overwhelming odds to defeat the bad guy, save the day, and it leaves me wanting more. But what we get now, across the board, is lambasted for wanting what was once considered normal. And this is how China's doing it. In my last video, I used the analogy of a restaurant, and I think that it's still very apt. And what I think Western game developers have failed to understand, and instead of listening, they're telling us that we're somehow wrong. There's an effort to other us. We've seen it time and time again on Reddit. Pick your mainstream media, gaming journalist publication, and the first thing they do when a game fails, that the developers decide to shove pack full of DEI, and yes, DEI is what I consider woke. And then when the game fails, they blame the gamers. It doesn't work like that. The market dictates what's valuable. And you don't get to critique the customer base because you gave them a shitty product. One more again. You don't get to critique the customer base because you produced a shitty product that we don't want. And any understanding of market functionality would tell you this. Where there is a void for a desired product, someone will provide it. And who is providing it? It just so happens to be China. And I'm going to give everyone an example of what I mean by this. Shameless plug again. Over at gamer2gamers.com, we wrote in late May about the game Intergalactic. Obviously, it's not out yet. There's been quite a bit of buzz about it on the interwebs. And one of the things that gamers are sick of is it seems like there's an intentional act, and we've also seen this with Fable, to uglify female characters, to make women LARP as men. instead of just letting female characters be female. Here's a harsh understanding that China is going to show us in the games that they present to the West. And here's a flash of the blinding obvious, as I used to say when I worked in the government. Men and women are different. For as much as people like to pretend that we are not, we are. You can look at gaming analytics and it'll immediately tell you that the things that men are interested in games is significantly different than those things that women are interested in games. The way we approach problems is different. Men don't necessarily lean into their feelings as much as women do. And that's okay. We're different. But when you go to the lengths of making female characters ugly because to make them pretty would be tantamount to objectifying women, you've already lost. Here's a hint to the Western game developers. And Naughty Dog, again, we want you to do great. I'm just going to scroll to this picture again because it's just so horrific. Men like looking at pretty women, even in video games. Oh my God, call the cops. Get this guy out of here. He's an extremist. How dare he say that men like looking at pretty women? Holy crap. Who would have thunk it? And when you look at what's being developed in the games coming out of China, there seems to be a basic understanding of the male psyche in the West. They look at our gaming history and say, oh yeah, they used to put pretty women in their games, and then something changed. The game developers seem to have had a change of heart in what to provide their gamers. And oh, look at the discourse on social media. Forums like Reddit. I don't know how often people go on 4chan. I don't spend a whole lot of time there, but look at the discourse there. Look at X, Facebook. Look at the commentary coming out of YouTube channels like mine. Like Asmongold. Young, yeah. You may not like those people. You may not even like me. But instead of leaning into ad hominem attack, address the issue that we're raising. And I will say this, not to make this video too long. We're making it easy for China to overtake the West in gaming. And this is not to say that China doesn't have its own issues too. I bet we'll never see in any Chinese video game them talk about Tiananmen Square. I bet that. This is not to say that China is somehow perfect, that they're flawless, that they're the right way to go. I have significant issues with the country of China, with the government of China. But I can also be objective and put that aside and acknowledge how they're approaching video game development and sales in the West is a problem now, and it's only going to get worse. And as I've said before, there is an old adage from Napoleon. Never interrupt your adversary when they're busy making a mistake. And that extends beyond armed conflict. That extends beyond foreign policy decisions. It also extends to the market. And if you're China, actually scratch that. Let's just reverse all of it. Let's say that we were trying to break into the Chinese gaming market, and there was a thirst for games that depicted strong men overcoming unrealistic odds. And then the Chinese game market just refused to give that to those gamers. We were able to jump on Chinese social media, Chinese forums, and all these gamers are asking for it. Why won't they give us these games? They would say on their social media. And then the West, finding a way to operate in the Chinese market, which I acknowledge could be pretty tough, delivered that game. And Chinese gamers bought the shit out of that game. Who would knock that? Who would look at that process and say, oh, you're not being culturally sensitive because you're providing these gamers what they want? Maybe some wokey leftist would complain about that, who's always crying about inclusion. But again, there are two things that typically do not care about your feelings. One is reality, and the other is the market. So Western game devs, you're in a position to either die or flourish. If you opt the former, keep doing what you're doing. Keep making female protagonists in games look like wild pit bull dogs. Keep doing it. Make Fable, make her look like she's been drugged through the mud twice and curb stomped a dozen times. Go ahead. Go ahead. And then when China develops a game with similar functionality, with Chinese cultural nuance, history, tradition sprinkled on top, and the female protagonist is a bombshell, she just looks amazing. And she's showing some skin because they understand the male psyche. The only thing you will be able to do is cry harder. Because at least right now, you're not able to control how gamers spend their money. When I was in the U.S. Army, there was a saying that we used to always say, especially when it was an instance where we were encountering tough times. And it was adapt and overcome. A more crude version of that is adapt or die. And the Western gaming market is exactly in that position. You're watching your competition close the distance on you. They're walking your ass down in the market. And instead of taking a look at what they're doing, even in the privacy of a boardroom, and saying, how the hell did they how was Black Myth Wukong so successful? How'd they pull that off, Susie? Instead of doing that, some market analysis, what do you want to do? If you don't like my butch character, you're a bigot. This is a self-inflicted wound. And I'll close with my opening. This is exactly how China is exploiting the weakness in Western games. I'll end it there, guys. Thank you for watching. Please follow us on X. Give us a subscribe and a follow on YouTube and over at Rumble. Come over and see our content on gamer2gamers.com. And we will see you on the next one. Doc St. Clair out.